Cool. So the first thing I'd like to say before anything else is if you're wondering how do I use the glyph, you hit the control key. Only the control key on the right side of your keyboard, the one on your left doesn't work. So this game has a tendency to make it seem like your keyboard's broken, when it's actually not. Okay, so this is the Legend of Matanui beta. If I believe I've done this correctly and I know what I'm doing, this is patch 1.4 from the Beaver House. It's been a while since I downloaded the latest patch. And I haven't played this particular patch version before. So, although I'm definitely not blind to this game, I am blind to the patch. So some unexpected things may show up. Despite what I would expect, I haven't seen very many playthroughs of this yet. Only from the Beaver House themselves. LJ claimed that he had like some sort of something recorded, but he hasn't posted it yet or anything. So there's somewhat of a drought of Let's Plays on this. I guess people don't really want to mess with it because of its proneness to crash, and they just want to wait until the reliability of the game increases dramatically, so that they don't have to ever worry about it crashing before even playing it. And, well, that's kind of not very adventurous. Yeah, so making a recording of this particular version is rather challenging. It does have a save feature, so the games do save. However, the save files, they get corrupted extremely easily. So if I were to hit a glitch, right, and the game freezes up, or the game crashes, which happens often, then the save file can get corrupted and I have to start over from the beginning. Sometimes the save file is not corrupted and then you can just start over from your last save file. That's still a thing, so if you don't kill the enemy before it runs between your legs, it can be very difficult to escape the enemy. It's not necessarily impossible, sometimes you can jump around and jump on top of it. The game developers had surprising attention to detail on certain things with this game. Such as, yes, if you jump on top of one of the Rahi, they die. And yes, die. Bionicle was all about, oh, we're just trying to get rid of the infected mass, but there's no infected mass rendered. These particular kind of bugs are particularly prone to moving quickly and getting between your legs before you can kill them. And I somehow subjected myself to playing this game with the amount of space taken on my screen by the game is tiny. So it's really hard to aim. So that's my excuse for missing these things a lot. Yes, I'm too lazy to read all this out loud. theoretically could practice my visual novel recording and read text out loud in funny voices, but for some reason right now I don't feel like it. That's a reference to, of course, well, it's the final boss of the level, whatever that is. I forgot what you call that right now. So if you find the throwing disc and you give it to this Matoran, he just gives you like pickups like health, energy, or ammo. There is, when playing through the alpha, I found some evidence that what the developer originally intended was if you completed these side quests, it would expand your capacity to hold health or energy. In that I completed side quests and then glitches would happen and then I would randomly get a higher capacity of health or energy for no reason. But in the beta they decided to be lazy and just make it pickups, which makes these not worth doing. The Beaver House, when they came up with Rebuilt, they decided, let's make it so that it does increase your capacity for health and energy, which is a choice I definitely approve of, because that's what it seems like the developers originally intended. And the pickup that they used to facilitate that process is the Anovolosphere, which, despite me once thinking I knew a whole lot about this franchise, I actually don't know the origin of it. It's the disc thrower again. I'm not being very systematic of my combing through all the Matoran. Tall. Very tall. And strong. Yes, that's a reference to something that they took out of the game. And so, in context, makes absolutely no sense. Okay. Yeah, but what I was trying to say is I don't know what the origin of the Anovolosphere is. It might be from Quest for the Toa. I haven't played Quest for the Toa yet, or seriously watched anybody play it. I know it appears again in Menol. But I highly doubt that the Beaver House would put something in this game inspired by Menol. Boof. So you can kind of jump on them. Lost had a lot of health from doing that, though. Give my aim's really bad because I'm using such a small screen. Can't actually hit this thing. Oh well. And then if you kill this, it doesn't matter, it'll just spawn another one. Because I can't get rid of the hive yet. So yeah. The jumping mechanics on the beta made the game somewhat more difficult in the alpha. In the alpha, you could change the character's speed as it's flying through the air. And in the beta, they made the mechanics much more physically realistic, where what determines how you fly when you jump is purely how you were moving before you jumped. But some places in this game, the platforming is designed specifically for the alpha mechanics. So there's just some grotesquely hard platforming in this game in some places. Now, an argument can be made that the difficulty of this game is very inappropriate for its target audience. Oh, I don't have the hook yet. Where is that? It was meant for Bionicle fans in 2001. Well, in 2001, Bionicle fans were, well, what? 7-year-olds? So a 7-year-old would have a difficult time playing a game with this difficulty. Now, for me, who's no longer a 7-year-old, the game isn't really all that hard. And I don't recommend patching it to make it easier. But I'll rant more about the whole difficulty of the game once I get to Leo's level and I'm doing vines. And if you don't have enough tokens in your arsenal, that door won't open. I have not memorized the token quotas, so I don't know how many tokens specifically that you need. I think to finish to get through the door before the final boss, you need 60 tokens. This is something that was added to the game in the beta, so it's something you don't experience in the alpha. And in the original files, some of the requirements for tokens were ridiculous or impossible to achieve. And so the Beaver House patched some of those requirements down, which can create some controversy because you're thinking, well, what's too easy and what's too hard? And I always like my things on the hard side, so I would argue, just make it just enough tokens that if you got every single token, you can get through the door. Now, what I did there was really stupid. You can just jump across the creek over there to the left as you walk in. You don't have to hop across those stones. I just hopped across those stones because they're trying to talk and play at the same time. Sometimes when you do that, you just go on autopilot and do stupid things. This is something cute. Some people say that he can teleport by walking slowly. But none of the text says that at all. It just says he could just move quickly by walking slowly. So when I originally interpreted Kapura's dialogue as, well, slow and steady wins the race to an extreme mysterious extent. And not necessarily he has some sort of teleportation power. But people like to simplify things and put them in categories that they already understand, right? It's got to have some sort of grid of previously known superpowers and just shove everything in that structure. Yes, this thing which no longer makes sense because you took it out of the game and then you reference it over and over again. Okay. Yeah, this is tricky. I'm actually using OBS to find the hives here, as opposed to actually finding them in the window that's actually running the game. Again, you don't have to collect every single token, but you have to collect enough tokens to get through the door. So if you think, at least on the first level, I don't need these, and you just don't grab them, you get this nasty surprise at the end. Then you have to go back through the whole game all over again. They do give you an opportunity to do that in a teleportation portal. But it's still kind of a pain. Yeah, so you can see here that this is supposed to be a door of this size, and the developers just stretched the vertices down to make it smaller so that they can consolidate the Picari mechanics. Because the alpha previously has two different mechanics, one that's digging and one that's pushing blocks with your Picari. And that made, well, too many mechanics and just more mechanics than necessary. And so they decided to consolidate it and make it so that using the Picari and digging were the same thing, which makes sense. I agree with that decision on their part. This part you actually have to do have to do the lily pad hopping. If you fall in the water, you don't die. You just have to climb back out of the water, which I know on the alpha tended to cause glitches. I don't know what'll happen here, but I don't want to have to mess with it. Again, how far you jump is determined purely by how fast you're moving before you jump. Now, the reason why this even exists is, in the alpha, this was the path you would take to progress beyond this area. There's actually two ways you could progress beyond this area. But when they developed the beta, they decided they wanted to make the game more linear for some reason. And so this way they had this leftover sort of route in the area. Instead of closing it off, they made it just a way to get bonuses. So this is the Thali Wally, which I won't give back to the Matoran because it's not going to do me any good. It's just going to give me pickups, which I don't need. So I'm not going to bother with that. I'm just going to hand it to him. But if you do give it back to the Matoran, you get pickups. Pickups recharge way faster than they need to. Still don't have 200 ammo yet, so we can still collect these. So you notice that there's a geography issue here, right? You started off on a beach. You walked down a level path. You fell down into a pit, right? So you fell down into a deep pit. That got you to the village. But then you walk out of a door to the village, you ended up in the atrium. Then you walk out of a door in the atrium, and now you're looking down at the ocean from up on a cliff. So you fell into a pit from the beach, then walk horizontally, and now look down at the beach. So the alpha had this area between the village and the atrium, a platforming area where you platformed back up, and that made the geography make a whole lot more sense. But then when they developed the beta, they decided, oh, there's just too many areas, the pacing of the game's too slow, we need to get rid of them. So you can get to the end more quickly, and so it made the geography not make sense. That extra area that they took out kind of made it so that when you left the village, it had a sort of a venturing into unknown feel. Like the forward face of that area was very mysterious looking. Because the game doesn't tell you what you were going to encounter past the village, you don't really know what your goals were going to be. So it helps set the mood, right? So there's a lot of reasons for that area to be in there. And I know that Liam and the Beaver House have brought up the idea of putting that area back in Rebuilt, but the latest version of Rebuilt, or the most recent I know of, doesn't have that area put back in. In the original files for this, these bridges here would appear to be already there. If you entered this area, which I believe is like Cliff 3, or I don't know, Cliff 4 from Cliff 2 from the previous, if you go through the door from the previous area to get to this area, then the bridges would already be out, which was a bug, and it's a bug that you didn't have in the alpha, only in the beta. It's one of the couple things in this level that worked better in the alpha than the beta. However, it wouldn't be the problem if you warped to this area using the debug menu. You notice in the latest version, and and immediately previous versions to the latest patch, that's fixed. So good job. Of course, there's not a game-breaking bug or anything. This made the game easier. So this right here is stupid. In the alpha, this was just a dig, right? So you didn't need to use the Picari to dig. You use the shift key to use your mask, by the way. You could just dig if there was a dig. But you notice that it doesn't work in the beta because of the way the mechanics are. So I have to use the shift key. I have to use the Picari to do the dig. And there's a rule this game always follows where if you need to use a mask, there needs to be a plaque next to the place where you need to use that mask that tells you need to use that mask. Like, and there's like a little picture of Picari on a plaque next to it. Well, this doesn't have that. So you'll be like, if you're used to playing the alpha, you might be digging at that for a while, trying to dig through and not noticing what's wrong, because there's a developing mistake there. It defines the rules the game they usually follow in the game. What also makes it even more dumb is you can make digs that don't require the Picari in the beta. Those will appear later. So there's no reason why they had to change that so that you needed the Picari. So if you wanted to patch that, you could theoretically make it so you don't need the Picari to dig it somehow. There we go. This right here has no reason to exist. The reason why it does exist is because, again, the alpha used to be much less linear, right? So there's branching paths here. This is where you go for the Nui Jaga fight. But they reused this area without modifying it that much in the beta, so you still had this, like, alcove here. And so they just decided to put ammo pickups there. But they wouldn't go through all this trouble just to make an area and use ammo pickups. So if you're playing this game for the first time, you might go, this is a weird game development decision. Why is it there's this whole path just for picking up ammo? Maybe that's not how you do this. You don't do that jump in particular. It looks like you make that jump in particular. Okay. Yep. Somewhat of a tight tolerance jump there. Okay, again, you don't need every single token. So I might pass up a couple tokens on this, but I won't pass up those two. So I'm going to actually grab those two. Those two, that one in the middle there, yeah, that one, not worth it. I'll leave that one. And those two just below me, I'm just going to leave those, because you can leave 3 tokens behind and it won't be a problem. This jump can be surprisingly annoying. Okay. Now, there was a version of a patch, I don't know if it was 1.3 or 1.2, where this area, the next area that I'm going to go to, crashed on entrance. And it would always crash on entrance. It wasn't a probabilistic thing or stochastic thing. It wasn't the original, it was a patch. Now the next patch I think it was, well, if this is 1.4, then it must have been 1.2 because that was fixed in 1.3. But there are versions of this, patch versions where this crashes. And of course, it would only crash on entry from this area. If you warp to it, it would not crash. Yeah, see, it's fixed now. So when LJ said it got to a specific area, it just suddenly crashed, right? On some LJ Johnson show episode, I forgot which one it was, then he was probably referring to the crash at the entrance of this particular area. Funny thing about this game is it actually saves the damage you do to the bosses. So, like, if I do damage to this and then I die, which happens often, then it just, you know, it saves how much I've shot it, so that I can just shoot it more until it dies. It's actually easier if you get all the way out to the area before you shoot it, because then you can walk in circles around it. Somewhat counterintuitive. Cool. Yes, this match, which is only used once. Okay, so this L1A1, right? Let me see if I hit the insert key. No, I don't have the debug menu on. It's famous for something called the sound buffer crash, which is where the game would crash if either one of these platforms collapsed, or you killed a Rahi or destroyed a hive. So, because you have to kill a Rahi in order to open a door to get out of this area, it was impossible to go through this area without crashing the game. Let's see how well the sound buffer crash has been fixed now. I think the sound buffer crash also is one of those things where it only happens if you go into this area from the previous one. It doesn't happen if you warp to it. So you can use a warp to get around the sound buffer crash. Also, a trick that the game intended, like, you're supposed to think of this, but you don't, is, let's see here. I forgot controls for changing masks. This is not good. Shift turns the mask use on and off. I thought it was like Z and you're now pressing a whole bunch of different keys now. Trying to remember which one changes my mask. Oh, it's Q. Okay. And then tab changes the other way? Okay. So Q and tab to change which mask you're using. If you use the Huna, then the platforms don't collapse. You stand on them as long as you want, they won't collapse. However, because you're on Onua, you only have 3, your capacity for energy is only 3 units. So it's really hard to get through all of this while having enough energy to keep the Huna on the whole time. So you ran out of energy. But just in case you haven't figured that out yet, you can use the Huna there. You can go through without using the Huna, because there's, you know, delay and there's enough time. You have some time before the pillars collapse. Looks like the sound buffer crash has been completely and utterly fixed, because I just destroyed a hive and killed a Rahi, and I haven't gotten a crash yet. So, looking good so far. I'm not video game engine savvy enough to know why it's called the sound buffer crash. It's caused by the sound buffer somehow. Which seems to me like this engine isn't compartmentalized enough. Why should the sound buffer affect things like, well, pillars collapsing? Okay, so this is the actual Nui Jaga fight. Now, the original files, I believe, it doesn't have a cutscene at the beginning of this fight. So one of the things the Beaver House patched was they added an opening cutscene to this fight. Now, whether the developers originally intended there to be an opening cutscene, I don't know. It's hard to tell. There is one though in the beta. I mean the alpha, and in the beta there's one for the Fiku. Right, so you would think that they intended for there to be one here. Would be my best guess. And so, do I approve of that patching behavior? Yeah, I think I do. It's fine. It didn't create a glitch or anything. It doesn't hurt anything. I goofed this up. Again, these are easier to fight in big open spaces. I'm not very good at video games, but you would think that anybody should be able to, you know, do this better. Yeah, the Nui Jogger respawns behind that piece of wood, and then it gets caught behind it and can't move. And it's just a sitting duck. And if you don't destroy the hives, they just keep respawning. Of course. Notoriously, Onua's level has much more Rahi than the later levels. So if this is really frustrating, don't worry about it. They intended the fauna to be a lot more prevalent than they ended up actually being in the end. Looks like I got it all. Okay, it's kind of odd why there's this weird cage thing here. That's being used as a door to decide that to regulate when you can leave this area. Of course, the reason why it's like a cage is because, well, it's a cage. In the alpha, it's used like a cage. So a lot of vestigial stuff in this game. If you understand its development history, you know what it is. Okay. Ruru time. This is the part where you have digs that you don't need the Bakari to do. See, no Bakari needed. In the alpha, even if you ran out of energy to power your Ruru, you could still do this part by just feeling along the wall. But they added those pits in there in the beta, which make it harder to do so, harder to get through this area like that. So the consequences of running out of energy with which to use your Ruru is greater, in that you basically can't finish. There's the throwing disc you can give back to that Matoran, if you would bother, which I'm not going to bother, but you can. And then he just gives you some pickups. Shoot things. Yeah, if you saw my setup right now, you find this so weird. Like I'm using the game recorder software to play the game. That was a glitch. Well, I really glitched this up. Will dying fix the glitch? Yes. Okay, good. So that's an interesting random bug. So it's possible to make it such that you're always digging and you lose the ability to shoot. Wait, it's saved that I dug that? Okay. That's interesting. get the bat hive. Get the fast bug. Get the bat. The camera. Come on, camera. Onua's melee is practically useless. Beaver House claimed there was a patch for it, increased its hitbox so that it was less useless. But I'm still finding it useless. So it is what it is, I guess. This game doesn't have separate controls for melee or ranged. It's just how far away the thing that your reticle is pointing on is from you. It just automatically switches. So it kind of does melee perhaps when you don't necessarily want it to. I got lost. Actually, it wasn't less like I got lost, it's like I was talking and so I wasn't paying attention to where I was going. Get the bat. Cool. That already destroyed? Yeah. It remembers that I destroyed it. Get the fast bug hive. Okay, so that particular region of the map triggers the glitch right there. Okay. So there's no... Oh, okay, I fixed it. No, it's only the hive that fixed it, so I'm gonna have to kill this thing by jumping on it. That's great. I believe that goes on to the next area. This down here is just for some sort of bonus of some sort. Yeah, it's tokens. Okay. You actually do need this ammo. There was a pit there, and I should have used the Ruru, but didn't. So now I'm getting an embarrassing high quantity of deaths, which is something you don't want in a Let's Play. Create something that people will skip through. And now I just got lost. No, it's not that one. This one. Oh, I ran out of energy. Okay, great. This is too many deaths. Actually, pick up the energy over here. Now I have plenty of energy. See, now I can actually jump over this gap. Okay. So basically what they're saying is that you can't use mask powers in a boss fight. This right here goes back to Onua's hut in the village. So this is how you go back and return the items like the Thaliwali and the disc to Matoran who need them, if you want to do that. There's a bunch of little alcoves in the shrine area. This is called the shrine. We still have one more token I haven't gotten. The reason why these are here is because in the alpha there are many doors leading out of the shrine. Right, you can see that like the vertices are pulled down to a point here. You see these big polygons, so you get this unrealistic rock texture. That's because there used to be a door here, and instead of adding more polygons, they just pulled the vertices down to a point to kind of get rid, like a drawstring, to get rid of the door. So now there's only 2 doors from the shrine, and the areas you would get to if you left through these doors in the shrine. In the alpha, they're either omitted, right? There's a lot of areas omitted from the alpha to the beta, or they are moved to the path you take to get to the shrine. So some of the areas we just went to, especially the lily pad platforming like ones, were areas that previously you go from the shrine to instead of areas you'd get to before you got to the shrine. So you walk up to this door, it opens. See, in the alpha, they had this idea that you'd have a big power arsenal, right? You have multiple different glyphs, and they could have multiple different powers. And then they figured out they didn't have a way to implement that into the boss fight, because none of these boss fights actually implement the power of these glyphs or take advantage of them. And so the extra glyphs were just kind of dumb. And so they decided if the extra glyphs are dumb, then we don't need the areas where you get those glyphs. And so we made the shrine areas a lot simpler and have less tasks to complete in them, which made a lot of areas get cut that were not necessary. It was a dumb mistake. It's hard to have enough energy to get through all that, but you use that cheat to get through. Oh, it froze. This level has something unique right here as a checkpoint, right? If you get to stand on top here, then if you die later on in this area, then you respawn here instead of the beginning of the area. This is called the infamous part because, I forgot the name of that YouTube user who uploaded footage of this. Deep Brick, that's what it's called. In Deep Brick's Let's Play, right here there's a glitch where, or just a mistake, where the hitbox for death is too high. So you jump off that ledge there to get down this platform, and you just die. In the alpha, this was harder because instead of these big rectangular platforms, it's these little circular stalactites. If you can see what I mean. Ah, this is a crash. Okay.